Picture a world with no more life, no trees, no animals, no plants. A world that's so hostile not even bacteria can survive. If you think this sounds like science fiction, it's actually closer to reality than you might imagine. 252 million years ago, this almost happened on our home planet. And to find out how close we came to extinction and what we can learn from history to prevent such a disaster from happening again, we went to some very extreme places. This is the real story of the day the Earth almost died. Let's travel back in time to a place and period known as Pangaea. This was a supercontinent where all the Earth's land masses were joined together, surrounded by one global ocean called Panthalassa. Back then, the world was ruled by a bizarre mix of weird, wonderful creatures. Giant millipedes scuttled around, terrifying-looking beasts called Dimetrodon prowled near the water's edge, and in the shallow seas swam some strange ancestors of today's sharks and rays. But despite this menagerie of strange beasts, life on Earth was about to change forever. But what caused this ecological apocalypse? The answer is hidden deep in the Siberian rocks. Here, buried beneath miles of solid rock, are the remains of a disaster that unleashed hell on Earth. Let me introduce you to the Siberian Traps. These are huge areas of ancient lava that were formed when massive volcanoes erupted in Siberia. At the time, Pangaea was situated right on top of these fiery vents, meaning all life on Earth was in the direct path of certain destruction. But when did this happen? To answer that, we need to go back in time to the Permian period, the last period of the Paleozoic era. It began around 300 million years ago, when the first forests appeared on land and lasted until the end of the Paleozoic, around 252 million years ago. That's when the Permian extinction occurred. This mass extinction wiped out an estimated 70 to 90% of all marine species and 70% of terrestrial vertebrate species. And it is the most severe extinction event in Earth's history. To put this into context, when the dinosaurs died out 66 million years ago, around 75% of the planet's species disappeared. So the Permian extinction was devastating in comparison. But how did this happen? Well, over millions of years, magma slowly built up underneath Siberia. Eventually, there was so much pressure it exploded outwards in the largest volcanic eruption in Earth's history. The lava spread across the northern hemisphere, and in total, it covered an area twice the size of the United States. This created a new mountain range called the Urals, but it also triggered massive changes to the climate. You see, when the magma from the mantle reaches the surface, it releases gases trapped inside the Earth. Exactly how much carbon waste was released by this process is still unknown, but one thing is clear: it was a lot. As the CO2 filled the atmosphere, it began to trap more heat, slowly warming the planet. In fact, temperatures rose by between 3 and 8 degrees Celsius. And because the carbon waste began to dissolve in the ocean, it made them more acidic. These two changes alone would have been enough to wipe out most of the species on Earth. But there were more disasters yet to come. You see, as the Siberian traps continued to erupt, huge amounts of sulfur were released. This created massive sulfuric acid clouds which fell to the ground as acid rain. Meanwhile, the seas became so acidic that many creatures like corals and clams could no longer build their shells or skeletons. Then, in the oceans, the rising temperatures led to the formation of vast dead zones. When I say that, I mean areas with no oxygen at all. As you can imagine, these conditions didn't exactly make for a happy marine environment. To make matters worse, the lava flows blocked many rivers, stopping fresh water from reaching the oceans. Instead, salty ocean water seeped into the ground, contaminating freshwater sources. With life on land and in the seas under attack, it's hard to imagine anything surviving. But remarkably, a few creatures did. They include Lystrosaurus, an early relative of mammals, and a small mammal-like reptile called Morganucodon. But why were they able to survive? Scientists aren't sure, but it may be because they lived in the southern hemisphere. During the Permian extinction, the devastation was more severe in the north. Some researchers believe this is because the supercontinent Pangaea absorbed much of the carbon waste in the south, delaying the onset of massive climate change there. But regardless of why it happened, the aftermath of the Permian extinction showed just how powerful nature can be. You see, when scientists studied fossils in the aftermath of the event, they found that life bounced back quickly. Within 5 million years, the number of species had recovered to 80% of the pre-extinction level. However, the recovery wasn't the same everywhere. On land, it took 10 million years for the diversity of species to return to normal. But in the oceans, it took 30 million years to recover to pre-extinction levels. But perhaps the biggest change after the Permian extinction was the disappearance of the trilobites. These arthropods had been around for 270 million years and were incredibly diverse. But after the extinction event, not a single trilobite was left on Earth. And this makes them one of only 3 major groups of organisms to ever disappear completely. So, what killed them and all the other creatures that perished? It's impossible to say for sure, but the Siberian traps offer some clues. Creatures that lived near volcanoes were exposed to high levels of toxic gases, including hydrogen sulfide. But as the gases spread around the globe, other creatures probably suffocated due to the lack of oxygen in the water and air. Many others would have been poisoned by acid rain or suffered from severe sunburn because the ozone layer had been destroyed. In short, every living thing was affected in some way. And for most, this proved to be too much to handle. But if the extinction event was so widespread and catastrophic, why don't we know more about it? Well, it's partly because we haven't discovered any sites with fossils that date back to the exact moment of the extinction event. That's the gap in the fossil record. However, we do have sites that preserve the aftermath. For example, there's Ghost Ranch, New Mexico. This area has around 40 layers of ash and pumice from the Siberian traps. And when scientists analyzed the fossils here, they found the number of species dropped from 22 genera to only 1. This is the greatest decline in diversity ever recorded in the fossil record from a single layer of rock. And this raises the question, could something like this happen again? Well, unfortunately, the answer is yes. In fact, today we're facing a climate crisis that bears an eerie resemblance to the Permian extinction. Let me explain. The burning of fossil fuels is increasing the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere. As a result, global temperatures are rising and ocean acidity is increasing. Between 1971 and 2002, the ocean absorbed around 30% of human-made carbon dioxide emissions. As a result, the pH of seawater has fallen by 30% since the Industrial Revolution. And just like during the Permian extinction, the biggest impact has been felt in the oceans. This is because they absorb around 50 times more carbon dioxide than the atmosphere. Already, this is having a devastating impact on life in the seas. For example, the warmer waters are causing coral reefs to die, and ocean acidification is making it harder for shell-forming creatures to survive. What's more, human activities are destroying many habitats. For example, forests are being cut down faster than ever before, meaning more carbon is being released into the atmosphere, and fewer trees can capture it. So is our world doomed? Well, like the creatures during the Permian extinction, we're feeling the effects of a changing climate. But we're nowhere near the tipping point yet. That said, we need to take urgent action to tackle the climate crisis and reverse the damage we've done to the natural world. Otherwise, we risk repeating the mistakes of the past. And that's why we must thank Sir David Attenborough for inspiring us to protect our planet for generations to come. He's narrated some of the best nature documentaries for decades, including the iconic Blue Planet series, Planet Earth and Our Planet. Our Planet showcases the incredible biodiversity that surrounds us and the threats posed to wildlife by human activity. Each episode explores a different aspect of the natural world, from the icy poles to the lush rainforests, showcasing the beauty and fragility of our planet. The series also highlights the impact of climate change on our planet and the steps that we can take to protect it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to learn more about the natural world, stay tuned. Thanks for watching.